Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webcast. This is another one of these webcast videos that we're doing with Vladimir. Now, for those of you who have not seen the other videos where Vladimir has appeared, let's ask Vladimir if you can do, a short intro or maybe say a few words about yourself before we dive into the topics.
Hi, my name is Vlad Pasman. I'm a director of data intelligence at Beyond.com, formerly known as Overstock. I'm sure you've been well aware, maybe even bought some items from us before. I've been focusing mainly on data analytics for the last 10 plus years with a diverse background and different industries, including finance and retail.
Vladimir, welcome. Welcome back. What is modern data architecture? I want to learn more about this.
Absolutely. Thanks, Luke. So it's very important to focus on data architecture because of it being exactly data architecture. Data architecture is there to help solve problems. It's a discipline that helps document organizations' data assets, map data flows, and basically provide blueprints for managing our data. Why is it modern? It doesn't have to be, right? Any data architecture that serves the purpose is absolutely necessary. And modern means it uses the modern tools, it uses modern concepts such as, what's important? Data as a product, right? Understanding data, the data delivers value, not just, a means to a value, but it is actually delivering a value, getting the data closer to the consumption. Data being high performing and scalable, right? In terms of getting insights right to the customer's doorstep and being able to scale the volumes of data uh, without significantly impacting the time it takes to produce insights. Right?
So it's not
Yeah,
the end itself, it's the means to the end.
it's a means to the end, exactly. Anything that we do is we do to serve our customer, whoever that is.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for a nice little intro on data architecture.
Vlad, I remember last time when we were talking, you were also mentioning how modern data architecture is um, flexible and modular. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to serve the customer, right? And enable, reduce the time to insight, improve the quality of insights, right? And so, in order to do that, we need to understand how to make data more discoverable, right? How to improve its quality, how to improve its governance, how to improve trustworthiness of that data, right? If I'm a let's say if I'm a hospital and there is a merger of multiple hospital groups, can I still make decisions across the entire enterprise quickly enough, right? If the answer is no, then we need to modernize. It doesn't mean that multiple groups that merge together didn't have a modern data architecture. It's just that they need to be the approach needs to be adjusted to serve the new needs, new reality. So when we talk about flexible modular, the most important things that come to my mind, would be, you know, data mesh versus data fabric, right? Data mesh focuses on domain-driven design. It's a pretty old concept, but it still holds true, right? So that I know where my customer data is, where my financial data is, and so on and so forth, right? Focusing on self-service. Domain-driven architecture here allows me to make data more discoverable, while data fabric provides federated automation, integration, governance, making sure that data is the best quality, that the quality applies all the way through. The data is fresh and things like that. The typical approach today would be not just one data mesh or data fabric, right? It's typically a combination where you do understand your data and how to serve it and serve the purpose and a specific customer use, business use, but also provides this kind of a federated governance. Yeah,
Vladimir,
go ahead.
I wonder why you said data mesh versus data fabric. Surely, from the answer, I felt like they might not be they might both be needed, right?
Exactly, that's what I was saying, right? You need both. You need separation of concerns, which data mesh provides, right? So
Mhm.
that you do not serve financial data to, marketing user, but you also need to have what I call the federated governance, right? Making sure that there is an oversight of, what are the service level objectives and indicators that guarantee quality data, which may or may not be different across multiple domains, but the oversight is needed. Understanding how data is being processed. Again, everybody may have different view, and you have the best people working on a specific domain. At the same time,
Mhm.
merging, for example, let's say low quality marketing data with high quality financial data is not going to produce high quality results at the end. So it's very important to have this global overarching oversight of in terms of data governance and things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to kind of like bring in a different kind of question. So, a lot of the customers that I work with on day-to-day basis, I'm seeing a lot of effort being put into digital. So, businesses are wanting their customers to operate in the digital world. That means data is increasing exponentially. How can we ensure that the architecture is going to be good enough to support the growth? Or when do you need to start thinking about this? Like in 5 years, if I'm going from 100,000 to 5 million customers, when do I need to start thinking about data architecture, scalability, and performance, etc.?
Well, let me ask you, maybe be more of a devil's advocate here. Let me ask you a question. Can you know always where we're going to be 5 years from now? Probably not, right? So let's not necessarily boil the ocean and try to answer every possible question, but look a couple of years ahead at least, maybe 2 to 3, if not 5, right? Do you anticipate doubling your data footprint? Maybe not for financial data, maybe only for supply chain management. Maybe if you're a hospital group, you know that you're going to be going on a acquisition, and you need to, buy, let's say, diapers across multiple hospital groups and multiple ERP systems and things like that. And so, making these kind of forecasts helps you understand where you need to be in terms of scalability. With data mesh, you get a choice. And the choice is, do I want to scale everything, or do I just want to focus my resources in a specific data domain? So if I expect procurement, supply chain management, whatever, require more resources, I could do that. Or I can take a more of a federated approach and have data fabric focus on scaling the entire infrastructure. Again, that's one question. Question number two, right? We're talking mainly about data acquisition, data warehousing. But if I have ERPs and CRMs and custom data platforms and things like that, right? You can offload some of the scalability needs to an external vendor too. So it's very important to identify the right partners to rely on when the time comes. Data architecture is more of a soft guardrails than
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a stick. If you don't do it this way, it's not gonna work, right? These are guardrails, but if you do not follow the basic principles, the chances of succeeding are much lower.
No, I think that's a great approach, by the way. Shmita, I'll pass it back to you, the mic for questioning.
Thanks, Luke. Um, so Vlad, we have been talking about what the architecture is like. Now, what ways do I go for to organize the processing of my data?
I'm not going to say something that's is an absolute truth, right? Everybody has a slightly different approach, and I want to be absolutely clear that every organization needs to decide for themselves what their architectural stack is going to be, depending on the needs, depending on the budget, and a lot of other factors, which may play into it. Typically, you have data sources, right? You ingest those data sources. There are tools for doing that. For example, I don't know, typical five trends, matillions, airbytes, and things like that. Some organizations I've worked for go open source and just do it directly. It really depends, right? So there's an ingestion layer. There is often what we call a cloud data platform, which is where you would store your data, whether it's a data lake or data warehouse or a lake house or whatever combination of them, right? A set of modern tools to organize your data mesh or and data fabric. And then on the side, many people, not everybody, but the majority, the trend today is to have data transformation tools on the side. A good example would be dbt, but it could be something else. Like Google has this product called Dataform, Matillion, and others that allow us to do data transformations inside of the data warehouses. What I would get to in my next step. But in essence, to simplify the transformation and preparing data for being packaged into a working product. And then next level is basically service, right? Self-service experience analytics. A perfect example of a self-service would be something like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, or those are self-service platform to the platforms that will help us build all kinds of customer experience and things like that. Business intelligence tools, Tableau or Looker, right? Machine learning, all the modern Gen AI tools that help us do business intelligence without clicking a mouse, and so on, right? So that could even be a web app at that stage presenting our insights to a customer. It could be Snowflake sharing, its cubes using, data sharing, secure data sharing. A lot of everything that is at the consumption level goes at that stage. And again, I'm going to emphasize self-service, right? The purpose of data mesh is self-service. It's improving availability of the data to the customer to help them make the insights without waiting for business intelligence engineer to come up with an answer for them, right? Being able to discover the data and use it and trust it and use it to produce the insights that they need immediately without having to wait for a long period of time. Now, finally, what I'm going to focus on is the medallion architecture. Why do we need this? So data gets ingested. Data is not necessarily clean in the sense, we have zeros instead of nulls, nulls instead of zeros. Values may be missing. Bad data could just be there. I don't know, let's say, customer addresses that haven't been standardized, normalized, and all this other stuff, right? So data comes in, there are volumes of it, and it's not necessarily structured the way that we want it to be structured for the user to be able to use it, right? So then the transformation tools come in and they say, okay, well, let's turn these multiple data sources into something that's standard and manageable, right? Let's clean it up. Let's build a platform from which we can start building insights, right? So first layer would be the raw layer. I wish I could show a diagram, but it's it's a podcast format, so I can't really do that. Then there's a silver layer where the data is validated, deduplicated, cleaned up, potentially turned into a star or snowflake-like schema, and so on and so forth. And that's, I'm talking more about data warehouse, right? And finally, data ready for consumption, potentially certified, again, potentially, typically aggregated, but doesn't have to be, right? That's the goal layer. That's the data we trust. That's the data I've prepared and made sure that when my customer, internal or external, is using this data to make their insights, I guarantee that it's going to be the best data possible and the easiest ones to make those insights.
Okay, that's great. I want to ask you something. Is data lake a concept, or because you said when the data gets to the silver stage in this medallion architecture,
Data
it's
lake
like
is a
warehouse.
platform.
It's like warehousing, right? So, what's the difference between data lake And the distinction I'm saying between data lake and data warehouse.
So data warehouse concept has existed for, I don't know, several decades, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to lie, I don't remember exactly the history. I'm not a PhD in history of computing, but the data warehouse existed initially with a primary goal of serving structured data, providing
Hmm.
structured analysis, right? The platforms were optimized for this, for building cubes and things like that. Data lake was a more of a modern concept, and I'm not gonna say data lake focused on unstructured data only, but the idea was dealing with larger volumes of data and separating decoupling storage from compute. I could use Google for storage, but my compute could be anything, right? It could be Hadoop, it could be Databricks, it could be anything at that stage. It could be my own internal build, Spark cluster. It really doesn't matter. So the idea was to separate it out and give people flexibility of improving potentially the performance of these platforms without having to move and change data, because data warehouse is kind of centralized, right? It's all in one place. Lately, data warehouses started converging, and data lakes started converging, and a new concept came up called the data lakehouse, right? Mirroring traditional analytics with advanced functionalities such as machine learning, right? It's very hard. It was very hard to do machine learning on a traditional data warehouse because it wasn't really designed for that. It was a query engine. So now, if you look at the convergence patterns, if a perfect example would be a Databricks building in all these additional features, like using SQL, like ability to build cubes, like the beauty of Databricks and Spark for years has been the ease of integration and running machine learning analysis on it and so on. And modern data warehouses such as Snowflake, cloud data warehouses, introducing products like Snowpark, which to an extent expand the ability of a traditional data warehouse to do machine learning, do AI, provide flexibility for more flexible data transformations, simplify data loading. I don't know if it's too much, but there's ETL versus ELT, right? Do I extract, transform, and then load, or do I extract and load into data warehouse and do the transformation, because now the computation in the data warehouse itself is typically depending obviously on the data. But one could argue that in many cases it's faster and cheaper to load the data and then do whatever transformation is necessary rather than cleaning it out. It really depends. So data lakehouse is the modern data architecture that's, I wouldn't say more typical, but probably the most flexible, and every vendor supports it now, as far as I know, right? So if you look at traditional cloud vendors like AWS, Azure, GCP, right? They've got their data lakes uh, from which data is ingested. They support streaming data into your Spark or Snowflake or whatever it is that you use. They support machine learning and AI out of the box in that platform. You get to choose if so obviously it will cost a little more to use multiple platforms, but it's also a very, very solid and valid pattern. A lot of folks separate and use things like, for example, Databricks maybe more for data engineering and Snowflake more for analytics. It really depends on how large the cubes are that you're trying to build. It all depends, but there's a convergence, and I would say data lakehouse is the most recent concept that allows you to marry the two. I would say they're not necessarily tools; they're platforms. They're architectural patterns that help you serve the data to your customer.
Got it. Got it. I think there's a conversation to be had here. Databricks versus
God, I
Snowflake.
think we're going into episode 17 at this point.
Yeah, but I think we'll come back to that. So you've already touched upon warehouse versus lakehouse. or warehouse versus the lake, or given a bit of history of both. So that's great. Could we maybe dive into some of the examples of the cloud data platforms?
So I'll be again honest. There's such a variety of these cloud data platforms that it's going to be impossible probably to list all of them. There
Just a few,
diagrams.
like
Yeah.
popular examples. Let's talk about them.
So traditional cloud data warehouse, right? It's your BigQuery, your Snowflake, your Redshift, your Azure Synapse, things like that, right? They've got slightly different technologies in the back, right? There's MPP, multiple parallel processing platforms like Redshift. Um, BigQuery is somewhat of a different beast, and Google has really made strides expanding it into an overarching platform that supports multiple, different things. Again, those are more of a data warehouse platforms, right? It's traditional SQL based, optimized for processing, for relational processing. In the beginning, in the early days, right? Well, Snowflake has all for a long time supported not just structured but unstructured data too. So you could import like your JSON files and things like that. BigQuery has been expanded in the recent years also to support unstructured data. So they've evolved a lot in the last few years. You would use this cloud data warehouse for your more traditional data warehousing needs. Traditional data lakes, again, all the major cloud providers will have one. Azure, AWS S3, Google Cloud Storage. Some are better, some are worse.
They just seem different flavors of the same thing, right?
There are different flavors and
Yeah.
different levels of automation. I would probably say to
Mhm.
my liking that Azure Data Lake is the easiest, most probably advanced in terms of the ease of use and things like that. But again,
Mhm.
they're all roughly the same. Uh,
Yeah.
they allow you to serve the data in a bucket. That's the idea, right? With the compute such as Apache Spark, which you could run for your own cluster or use a Google's data procs, AWS's AMR. Azure has its own Spark product. Databricks is really just a variation of a data lake, using its own, well, actually using underlying storage with additional protocols and standards on top to make it even more efficient than what other cloud data platforms. So it's more in terms of, it's very flexible. You can build it your a la carte yourself, or you can use a vendor and pay a little more, but get, Databricks is amazing, right? It's got so many features. It's got a Unity catalog, which is better than, again, for my taste, than other things provided by the, traditional cloud vendors.
Mhm.
And so you pay for the features, but you get what you pay for. You get your quality, you get your
Yeah.
ease of use, the time to market, the ability to train your users to use the platform would be much easier and simpler and
Mhm.
uh, with, let's say, Databricks than trying to build things out of pieces with a cloud vendor.
I want to follow this up with something else. So, quite recently, I'm working with a customer of ours. They basically were on-prem financial services company out in the UK. They're migrating to Azure Cloud, and alongside, one of the things they're doing is they're also going onto Databricks, and they see the combination of Azure with Databricks as a massive cost saving on the current on-prem. So that's one of the decisions they have made. We are obviously assisting them with this migration. They've chosen us as their trusted partner in doing so. But I mean, I know this decision on the high level, but maybe you can talk to us or highlight some of the key facts here. Like, why is there a cost saving for this particular transition?
It, I would argue that it really depends on a key, situation. Seven Signals or whatever the company is behind it that makes it's called Bootcamp or whatever that software Basecamp, right? Is they actually went from the on-prem to cloud and actually switched from cloud back to on-prem because they realized it's cheaper. If you are prepared to keep internal staffing and build your own your own private cloud, and that scales well for your business model. By any means, this is going to be the cheapest approach, right? Because you're paying, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google for them to do these kinds of services for you. So there is obviously a cost to it. So if your business model is able to rely on, expanding your private cloud cost efficiently, you should be doing that. Maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's a combination of
Okay.
private cloud and a public cloud when you know you need to grow, but you still have the core base of customers where you can extract cost savings. So obviously, paying
Mhm.
somebody is going to be more expensive, right, than doing it yourself. But you have a fixed cost if you do it yourself. So if you lose
Mhm.
50% of your customers tomorrow, 50% of your private cloud is going to be sitting idle, and you'll be paying for it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
have to you have to buy hardware, you have to host hardware, you have to power up your
Yeah.
cages, right? When I was in finance years ago, I had to compute some of these costs, and it's not cheap. So maybe the solution is the company I work for right now has a combination of private and public cloud, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It really depends. Now,
But
where
yeah.
things like Azure come in handy is, let's say I expect an exponential data growth, right? That I cannot really plan for. It's hard. Instead of buying, $1 million of worth of servers today and buying all that cache space and paying for it, hoping for some growth tomorrow, maybe I spin these up in the cloud in the meantime, and then when these customers become multi-year contracts or whatever, I move them into private cloud to save on costs. It really depends on the business model and the problem we're trying to solve. Now, the modern tools of all the vendors, I think that Google probably done a little more on the side. A lot of modern tools will allow you to apply your data lakehouse on top of a cross-pollination of multiple technologies. So Google, for example, supports access of, as long as your platform supports SQL. So let's say you could cross the on-prem Hadoop and Google Cloud buckets. All the major cloud vendors have similar technologies, or you can buy them off the shelf. It's not a huge problem. It all depends on, again, how much money you have and when you need it done, and what is the end goal of the problem, right? The solution needs to be customized, but the tools are there. The differentiating factor is cost versus convenience, right? Um, so, for example, Google is going to be maybe on an expensive side than if you did it yourself, but there's plenty of
Mhm.
open source
Mhm.
technologies you could do um, to bridge your private and public clouds. It really depends. Obviously, data
Okay.
governance in one place and the need to train people and need to have different kind of skill set is much easier and simpler if you're on a single platform than if you have to spend multiple. But again, all those problems have been solved. Um, we are in
Yeah.
almost, I would say, 15, 20 years of the cloud existence at this stage, and
Mhm.
so it's not um, none of this is a mystery anymore.
Long answer short, the answer is hire somebody good if you're making these decisions. So you make the right
Hire one
choices
good
and
architect, and
yeah,
implementation is not that big of a deal.
okay. Don't be lazy, guys. Don't stick with if you don't have the knowledge to hand, hire somebody who's good, or
And and
a
and
good
and, I- and
architect to
again,
handle
I,
this.
I would be again so super honest. There are people who have experience, right, but not
Hmm.
necessarily in the right platform, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that they're not qualified. Some of them might be more qualified than people you could bring outside. It really depends, right? Find the right person to do it. Somebody
So
who might know your
chicken and
data.
egg situation, Vladimir
Yeah,
here. Do I go choose the tools, then hire the people, or hire the people and then choose the tools, right?
I prefer people over tools because tools can be purchased, right? People cannot.
Hmm. So
People process as
yeah,
technology. People come as number one. Be a
but there's a
balance,
chance
right?
you might buy a bigger shoe and then trying to fit yourself in or a smaller
And
shoe,
that's
right?
that's why I keep saying, right? Figure out who your partners are. Who
Hmm.
do you want to be able to rely on for any work. Like if I get a carpenter or a painter for my
Yeah.
house, I'm not gonna walk off the street. I'm gonna go ask my neighbors who they use in the past, and I'll look at the
Mm,
bedrooms or whatever, right? So the same,
yeah.
the same thing applies here. Find somebody that you trust who can do the best possible job for you, and if you're comfortable, that person will be able to, hopefully, right? If you get the right person to analyze the processes and technology and bring it all together and solve your problem.
So experience of a similar complex environment plays a really key role
Yeah.
in the choice of persons you're going with, perhaps the industry niche, etc. Okay, great. Amazing answer. Thank you so much, Vladimir. I'm going to pass it over to Ashmita for the next one. Last part, I think. We're coming to the end of the episode.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. 15 minutes left. We've used that time well. So Ashmita, over to you.
Thanks. So, Vlad, we have spoken about, I think, 30 different platforms in the past few minutes, uh, tools. Now, I'm using a combination or a few of different tools, but how does it all fit together for my business?
I think the answer is, right, would you like to hang the poster on the left wall or on the right wall, right? And it's really a question of preference and the goals you're trying to address, right? What are the business needs that you're trying to solve? So, for example, which one is better, Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics? At the end of the day, is what are the problems you're trying to solve, and what is the cost you're going to pay? Because they're all different, right? Do I have the money for a customer data platform, or should I build one with Snowflake or BigQuery or whatever, right? It all comes at the end as think of it as a puzzle. In order to serve my needs, my needs or my customer needs, my user needs, I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? What are the top three things you're trying to solve, right? And based of that, and that, let's build the puzzle. Typically, as I mentioned before, right, you have an experience layer at the top, and you have more of a warehousing layer at the bottom. So you may choose to pass raw events directly to your Google Analytics or Amplitude or Salesforce or whatever it is. You may decide that I don't really have a necessarily a real-time requirement. Maybe I do, right? Maybe I do some kind of real-time cleaning, but maybe I don't have a real-time requirement. Maybe I want to pass my data through the data warehouse where it's been absolutely cleaned up and is the most accurate. And if a data pipeline down somewhere fails, I'm not gonna pass the wrong data to make incorrect insights, right? It all depends on tolerance. Again, I suggest that everybody uses this as a puzzle. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? Um, from there, who would be the partners that I would like to introduce to help me solve those problems, and then build the architecture your data layers in a way that are most effective for to solve those top 3, 5, 10 problems, whatever it is that we're trying to solve. It's I wish there was one answer, but everybody has a different one. It really depends on your, let's say, financial data, right? If I move by a penny, is it okay? It depends, probably not, right? But if it's digital marketing, can I make a directional decision on effectiveness of a specific product page or whatever, right? Uh, I maybe okay to make a directional decision. Maybe okay for data to be 10 to 15% off. Maybe it's okay for it to be even 50% off as long as the directionality doesn't change. It really depends on the scenario. And to add to complexity here, your service level objectives may be different for every data domain, for every tool that you use, right? So I strongly recommend building flexible platforms that can be swapped in and out, that can be improved and changed tomorrow. And because otherwise we may run into issues with costs and accuracy and completeness and scalability down the line, right? Build it flexible in the beginning. Don't overbuild, but build it at least with some flexibility in mind that will serve your needs for the next few years. But
Cool.
who of us will know that we're going to have an exponential scaling 5 years from now? We probably would, right? But the question is, maybe we'll change our business model, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we'll go from
It's
B2C to
yeah.
B2B, and that's again
Hmm.
build a foundation that's flexible, and then you can maybe a slightly heavier foundation that you can build a second floor of your house tomorrow, rather than trying
Hmm.
to build a weak foundation that only supports a range today. But you have to knock the whole place down and rebuild the foundation if you wanted to build a bigger house. It really depends on the scenario.
Building, for the future, be adaptable, be prepared for any,
Yeah.
changes that the market might throw at you or the
But
various
at the same
business
time,
models.
building a
Yeah.
foundation for Willis Tower here in Chicago and
Hmm.
building a ranch on top is probably not a good idea. It's probably a big waste of money because if we do decide to build a Tower, that's going to cost us billions of dollars to build, we may as well have a new foundation, right?
What about the Pareto principle here? What's the 80/20? So can you apply that logic?
I think we should be applying Pareto principle to prioritizing business needs. Do you see what I'm saying? 80% of your business needs can be served by a single platform. The question is, what does the platform going to look like? I don't know a single organization that has identical business needs. There is maybe I just haven't met them, but if you look at stores, they're big and small. And they have e-commerce and brick and mortar, right? And they have I don't know, supply chain management, things like that, right? But everybody
Yeah.
has a different flavor. Somebody has more stores, somebody has a fewer stores. Somebody has gas stations, somebody doesn't. And so
Hmm.
building, somebody may have purchased another company that uses 1980s technology, and it's very difficult to integrate it. And so there's never going to be an absolutely the same business scenario. But at the same time, your business model may be focusing on, I don't know, if I'm Amazon, maybe I'm charging people a little less, but I'm charging them more for using AWS. I don't know. I'm just throwing
Hmm.
your business model, the way you monetize your customers may be different, right? This is why there's such a plethora of different tools and vendors, right? Because they
Yeah. Yeah.
they solve everybody's problems a little differently, and that fit is a little better for a specific customer they
Yeah.
serve. And then a few years, the customer says, "Well, my business model changed. I gotta, you know, maybe Adobe doesn't work. Maybe Salesforce is better for me." Again, it really depends on the business needs and business tastes sometimes, right? Some business platforms, especially if you're in finance, you do not want people to break into your data. So you want maybe a little more on a privacy and guidance if you're in a highly regulated industry than you
Yeah.
would in a traditional e-commerce platform. But everybody will have a credit card and all kinds of other data which needs to be compliant and everything else.
That's the beauty of the whole thing, that there's no there's no such thing as perfect set of tools, perfect strategy. Every organization is unique, and they can have a unique bunch of
Yeah,
tools that they use, and they
you,
might
you'll
work
you'll have
best,
similar
yeah.
you'll have similar bricks. My wife wanted a third rack in the dishwasher, so we have a third rack in the dishwasher. My neighbor's wife doesn't have a third rack in the dishwasher. She actually doesn't like it,
Hmm.
right? So it's
Yeah.
it's a taste, it's a level of comfort. But I would say business need is number one. What is the minimum amount of money I need to spend to solve a problem? Now I'm starting to add governance and privacy needs. I'm starting to add,
Mm.
the flexibility of self-service. Does this vendor provide me with genai tools that allow me to generate SQL on the fly where I don't know much about SQL, for example?
By the way, thanks for reminding.
Yeah.
That's one of the tools we developed last year. We developed on GPT a tool that is able to produce the SQL query to access data. So we don't actually touch any data. We just produce the right query based upon your, natural language question to produce the query that gives you the answer. And it's constantly learning, so it gets better and better as you
And
use
and
it more
your
and more.
and your tool may work across multiple clouds, multiple vendors, and obviously Google will
Yeah.
have the same tool, which works best with
Which works
Looker
maybe with
and
Google. Yeah.
BigQuery,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And I'm sure that tomorrow they'll make that tool to work across all of your data.
That's another conversation, right? That's another
Yeah, it's
conversation to
it's
be
a
had,
it's
right?
a business conversation. Honestly,
Yeah.
they're tools that can do anything in the world, but if you're going in a big city and you're going to work, do you really need a car that can go 120 miles an hour? Well, it really
Mm.
depends. If you enjoy going in a car that's super nice and could go 120 miles an hour, but you're still going to be crawling in 30 miles, and you can afford it, that's fine. If you're a business, typically you will make a decision a little differently, right? My needs
Yeah.
today are X, and my needs, expectations of my needs tomorrow are Y, and I just need a tool that solves X and Y in the most effective way, right? So I don't buy, a Ferrari to drive, my kid to school every morning, for example.
You do have the odd case though,
I'd
every
love
now and
to.
then,
I'd love to.
right?